Hey everyone, welcome back. Uh, Different face this time. This is Jyoti Ramdat, the co-founder of Diversity Geek, also known as Nisha T. Mulchan's daughter. Today I'll be hosting our panel on mental wellness and self-care in the LGBTQIA plus fan communities, with a focus on how fandom has had an influence in our lives in regard to our mental wellness. So today we are joined by very fun lovelies who we've met at different aspects, different times in our lives. If you don't mind starting out, Yami.
Hey, I'm Yami Singtrong. I've been with DG since, my God, it was just an idea, right? It was like just a little beautiful idea. And it was Harry Potter Celebration that brought us together. So Potter for us is a big fandom for me. And I'm pansexual. Yes, I've heard all the cookware jokes. You don't have to say them. I got it. Uh, and yeah, we're going to be talking about some of the characters that are uh, like work for me and have helped me and then sharing with everybody else. So happy to be here.
Okay, and Kevo.
Hi, I'm Kevo Reese. I'm one of the co-creators of Kid Riot Comics, which is about a diverse group of superheroes who battles evil on the streets of New Jersey. I also run a few podcasts with my husband, and through podcasting, I met Nisha, where we bonded through our love of Doctor Who and its amazing diversity and all the things that it brings to geekdom. And I would call myself a gold star gay. Not that I think that's special or anything, but I'm not. I feel less special on the queer spectrum lately. I'm just boring gay now. Everybody else has like these cool things, but you know, clunk, nothing else.
And how about yourself, Matthew?
Oh, um, I'm Matt Levine. I'm a graphic designer, event coordinator, cosplayer, um, director of LGBTHQ.info. I do LGBTQ plus panels and special events for Comic Cons. And on top of that, I'm a heavy crafter and Uber fan geek for pretty much anything and everything related to comic books and sci-fi, and you name it, I'm there.
Awesome. I know Ken's getting oriented here, so let's switch over to JC.
My name is JCW, and I'm the founder of the Gamer Allied People of Color, otherwise known as GayPOC, whose mission is simple: to build, house, and protect Black and Brown voices and their allies amongst the queer spectrum as they approach intersectional crossways between gaming and technology. Founded my group in 2016, kind of just founded it just to have a place to go and talk about gaming, and activism can choose you sometimes. So I've been doing panels since actually last year when I was introduced at SoulCon. I've been getting a lot of groundswell, colleges and universities and other groups, which led me to a podcast with the doctor at Introspectional. And now I'm here at Diversity Geek, trying to become a part of the family and bringing forth some good awareness and a new perspective with a little bit of seasoning on it for y'all.
You are part of the family already. You're here. You're in.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, Mr. Ken.
Finally, I think can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I was making sure because everything's going on. I'm so sorry about all of this. I'm Ken Terrell. I'm the founder of Older Adults with Knowledge. It's a program that I put in place here in Central Florida. It has the culture life for all older adults as we age. Uh, I myself identify as he, him, and his. I'm a same gender loving male, and glad to be here on this panel.
And we are most certainly glad to have you. Now, I know that there is a lot for us to discuss in regard to the journey of the LGBTQ plus community in recent years, most specifically. I know that a few of us are from Florida, and then a couple of us are from Orlando. So there's definitely a lot in regard to mental wellness that's close to our hearts. Um, and fandom, I think, in recent is something that we have actually been able to celebrate in regard to being a part of the LGBT plus community. Whereas in the past, it was less celebratory and more, well, let's just say, it wasn't. It was pretty bleak. So we're gonna kind of just jump right in and discuss some characters or journeys that we've related to and have really seen ourselves like reflected in. I always like to think of the question in regard to when I'm looking at media. Um, who are some characters in the LGBTQIA plus communities that we've been able to see ourselves through their journeys of self-acceptance and identity, or heal along with them through their journeys?
Okay, can I start?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I, I was gonna start with Loki, but I know a lot of people haven't seen that, so I'm not even gonna get into it. But yeah, I was just thinking the other day about Xena and Gabrielle and that whole, like, I know they didn't,
It
come
was there.
together. Yeah, right,
It
right.
was there,
Okay, so
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so it was there, but they also had that like friendship. So it was like that they started as friends, and they just had that bond. And even though it wasn't said, everybody knew, and that was just it was huge for me, because like I had seen, um it wasn't so much gay characters for me as like real life people, like on shows like Real Life, like The Real World, or that was I was very sheltered, so like that was my first like real like introduction to people like me. Like, wait, okay, I this person's like me. And um also My So-Called Life, uh you know uh see, so you got it.
Yep.
So like shows like that, not so much like comics or anything like that. But then shows like Xena came along, and um then I got into Queer as Folk and the L Word, and it just opened up for me, living such a sheltered life, and like finally having something. It was like so great. So I think I grew up in the right time, and I grew up in Miami, so that was another thing. It wasn't like, people didn't so much beat you up because you were gay. They beat you up because they wanted your shoes, so so that's me. That's like my perspective. But yeah. Well, soon we'll talk about Loki, because you guys got to watch it, and then we can talk about it. We'll have another panel.
Now, Mr. Ken, I'm not sure. Well, he dropped off there, but our question again, in case anyone didn't catch it, was just we were talking about some journeys that we've been able to see ourselves through in LGBTQ plus characters in regard to either our own self healing or our own identity. Yes, Liz, spoilers. We are not going to get into spoilers. That's why we avoided Loki, but we'll touch on at least the general arc, not going into details. Okay, and how about for you, Kevo?
Well, I would like to say first and foremost that I really love the question, because very frequently when you see articles about queer things in fiction, you see the responses from predominantly straight audiences of, why do we need this? Who cares? And it's really great to see focus from people with a queer perspective talking about, it did matter to us growing up. It does matter to kids growing up. And we're living proof of that some people maybe didn't need it and they were able to make it through, and that's fine. But it does mean a lot to so many people. I know that one that really meant a lot to me as a middle schooler into mid high schooler was Buffy, which I know has become a lot more controversial with a lot of stuff going on. I still haven't sorted out all my feelings about the franchise, but Willow was such a groundbreaking character that even as a young boy, this queer woman, getting to see such an important character in such an important franchise be queer and get to live that for so much of the series really meant so much to me. And I know that a lot of other shows in that same genre today, like The Magicians and Roswell, New Mexico, are really carrying on that exploration of queer characters in a way
I
that's
really
really
don't know.
cool, and it's really good to see that that's being continued these days.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that's something that we briefly touched on, and we could definitely touch on later, in regard to like how to feel about older stories and the controversy to them, or the not so tact like tactful storytelling in regard to what would be considered good today. Um,
Yeah,
I know that both Matthew and JC touched on different characters in the same genre that 100% go into that. How should we be telling our stories today?
absolutely.
So let's go to you, JC.
Actually, can I go last?
Okay.
Matt, I want you to go first because the parallel is going to throw you with the
Yeah.
change
Who
of
wants us to
dynamic.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
I'm
Well,
We can't
excited.
wait. We can't. Yeah,
So-
yeah, we can't wait.
So my character was Rachel Summers, Phoenix 2, because I identified with her both as a queer man and also Jewish, because the character was to any gay person, she was obviously created very gay coding. Like, it was just between her story arc, her personality, the way she was drawn, everything was just gay coded. But also the fact that she came from a future, a dystopian future where all of her special abilities were used to hunt down her fellow mutants. That connected with me on the whole Jewish level, and also it felt like the dystopian future was like society pushing down my gayness so that I had to be like every other straight person from where I grew up. And the story arcs that they took her through in Excalibur, Chris Claremont and Alan Davis, were just amazing. That they brought her to the place where she ended up taking charge of her identity of being a mutant and using that as a way to protect her other fellow mutants, as well as bear the scars that she got from that dystopian future with honor, as like a remembering of never again. And that at the time I was still in high school and about to go to college, and it was I was very much more into my Jewish faith back then than I am now. But it clicked on that whole World War II Holocaust dystopian vibe thing with what was happening to the Jews and also the gays in the concentration camps, and everything just started like syncing up and layering, and it was just like that connection. And I still identify with her, and her Hellfire Gala outfit was just it was beautiful.
do you mind explaining a little bit more who Rachel Summers is?
Rachel Summers is the alternate reality or alternate timeline daughter of Scott Summers Cyclops and Jean Grey, the Phoenix from the X-Men. However, in that timeline, Jean Grey was never came back, so it was still the Phoenix in Jean Grey's body. So she was technically still the daughter of the Phoenix, even though it was Jean's Grey. It's
Complicated.
wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
It's X-Men.
It's X-Men, exactly.
Yeah.
Now I know I have my personal choice. JC, did you want me to go first even before you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Suspense is killing me. Okay, I'm sorry.
To me, the epitome of a perfect representation or perfect storytelling for not just an LGBTQ plus character, but somebody that's gone through trauma, PTSD, and not necessarily related to the coming out or coming of age in regard to like orientation or sexuality or gender expression. It was in regard to just their life. I 100% identified with Korra from Legend of Korra in the Avatar universe. I don't get like I don't get like worked up about many things, but anyone who doesn't understand Korra or Korra's story from episode 1 needs to take a step back to really understand the story arc that they were telling. That is 100% the story of somebody who is sheltered to in kind of a mirror version of Shira, where they're told like, you know, you're going to be meant for something big, like you're in a specific environment and you're training. to save the world. But along with that comes its own trauma. Even in, it's not necessarily hero complex, but that expectation that's put upon you. And then going through that journey, even however successful you are, there's always the pressure of how you're not doing it right, or what you've done wrong, or not living up to your own expectation of what it means to be a hero, in your own words. Aside from that, there's all the physical, mental trauma that she goes through. I know it's long done, but still, spoilers. There's just so much that that character goes through that just is an epitome of, I think, a really genuine story. And the writers did fantastic with even the physical expression that comes through working through your journey of trauma and self-identity. Because through Cora's PTSD, as with anyone that experiences PTSD, we also go through like a second like crisis of identity. And anyone who's gone through any type of trauma knows that you have to rediscover yourself and rediscover parts of yourself, because trauma changes you. It genuinely is something that you have to like look into yourself, and your identity is something that can be altered. And I'm not going to go too much longer, but genuinely, if you haven't seen Korra, or you've been thrown off by like that first season, you have to go through and stick with it and watch it. Everything has a reason. Every like snarky comment, or even if you're put off by the fact that they're teenagers and she's a hot-headed, like confident female, I'm just gonna say it. If it was a dude, nobody'd be complaining. But like if you're thrown off by that, it completely has a reason. Because by the end of it, that was her identity at that beginning, and through the end of it, she loses that. She loses that entirely and has to find it again in a different way. And then, not to mention, I mean, there is representation in regard to our community, and it was the first done on a major children network. And I always say it paved the way. It paved the way for She-Ra, for like all the DreamWorks Cartoon Network. I know it was alongside Adventure Time and like Steven Universe, but it was just before, in the way that it really did give that green light, in the sense of, you know what, we're just going to do it. The creator said, we're doing it. And I could not be happier.
Beautiful.
JC, it's your time to shine.
All right. So I know I originally discussed a certain somebody with you guys in storyboarding, but I really started to think about what it was like to identify with somebody in fandom. And I came from, like some of us, we came from an era where representation wasn't a thing, and we may not have necessarily known who we were at the time that we were looking for it. So I decided to take a look at, my journey through fandom, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, there is this one character that's actually suffered, PTSD in a way of irony, where their powers actually navigated around the ability to process. And you never see within this character that flaw ever really recovered. You see just this constant progression, and this character started out as a villain, for all intents and purposes, and was a part of one of the greatest stories ever told in comics. And then you see this transformation in this journey of redemption that then hits this flaw that shakes the comic universe as we know it. And you shake one of Marvel's staples into this modern day revelation that we commonly see in a lot of relationships, when you have couples that have been together for X amount of years, and then there's just a break, and then something else enters the picture, and it's not what you're commonly used to. I think as comic fans, we all enter this place of experiencing a divorce from what we knew growing up. So I think when we talk about the dynamic of what is Emma Grace Frost, that's what I really identify with. This woman never really got the opportunity to just be, because her history was villainous, but her redemption was never really validated. she was written in as a leader amongst children in Generation X after the Phalanx saga. But when she became head mistress of the Institute, she still dealt with the fallout of the Hellions being killed on her watch. So you never got to watch the path. And every time they introduced it through some type of villainous illusion where she was still suffering from that, even to, as most recently as about a year ago, when she had an affair with Scott. And then Jean died and gave Scott the blessing to move on with Emma. You watch her throughout the team for years, especially in Uncanny 452, where she has an interaction with Rachel Summers. And they have on the astral plane a played out battle conversation about how she's the other woman. And you watch her time and time again through Schism. You watch her through Dark X-Men sacrifice herself, which leads to AVX, where, a lot of people have written think pieces on the rape of Emma Frost, where Scott Summers forcefully takes powers away from her in order to become Dark Phoenix, realized. And then you watch her in Uncanny 602, and you watch her have this powerful monologue that Byron Michael Bendis writes, where she really reflects on, even though this man did this to her, she really did love him, like on this deep critical level. But on the outside of fandom, you really watch this woman get slut-shamed. You really watch this woman be ostracized. They go into her own solo comic book, and you find out she never had blonde hair. She never had a British accent. She's actually from Pennsylvania, and she had brown hair. But because she got ridiculed by her sisters, she psychically created this alternative image that we know today as the busty, scantily clad, woman. And it's a woman who has celebrated what she has in her individuality. And she even says to Scott in an X-Men Legacy, she says, a woman's ability to sell her sex is almost synonymous with a man's ability to fight. So she talks about what her assets are and how powerful they can be and what skills she brings to the table. You never watch this woman, not once. Even in Matthew Rosenberg's run, when she had Sinister take a chip out of her head so she could wipe mutant kind's knowledge from humanity so they could be safe, right before House of X, you never see this woman get the justice she deserves. In the next panel after she does that, Jean runs up and is kissing Scott, and she's standing there on the side.
So that's something that can definitely tie into. I know we got a question. A lot of times characters with a sense of representation in how we see ourselves in a journey tend to be written as villains or can be seen as villains. Now, do we think that there's any connection with quote unquote villains being connected as a part of the LGBTQIA plus community?
Okay.
I mean, all feel that, yeah.
No, I don't
classically,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I don't mean in the sense of I know that in the past, yes, a lot of the gay characters can end up, or a lot of the villains can be gay coded or queer coded. Now, I think nowadays more so it comes from that place of a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community have trauma that can lead to a sense of villainous versus a sense of heroism, because it's hard to find something to connect to, something to pull us into the light when you don't have something to heal yourself with or relate to yourself with. So let's say for a lot of people, if we didn't have something that we could see ourselves in or connect to, it'd be really hard to pull us out of the dark. And that, I think, is something that is represented in some or a lot of media, but I've noticed it's something that at least younger generations are pulling away from. And I know we had this conversation before, how currently what we're seeing out there is the result of the generations of people who went through the dark stories in media regarding the LGBTQ plus community, and now we're seeing those lighter sides of the stories. But there is still that middle section of let's say Yami mentioned Loki. Loki is a straight up chaotic neutral.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back in the comics, sometimes he helps the Avengers, sometimes he foils their plans, sometimes he's just whatever. He's his own person. He's just the god of mischief. That's what he wear the shirt. I do what I want. That's just him. So yeah, I don't see him personally as a villain. But I mean, I'm in this panel, so. But yeah, I mean, if you go back, he's not. I know in the cinematic universe, it's a little different. You think okay, well, he's obviously a bad guy, but they explain things like off camera, like, hey, he was mind controlled, or he was threatened, and so to me, he's not a villain.
It works.
Well, I mean,
It's fine. It works.
if you really want to get into it, he's also one of the only characters that's been so traumatized growing up by his entire family and his
Yeah.
society. And that's going to mess you up.
Yes.
That's going to make you want to act out and lash out and manipulate people and do things to
You
get
can't
what
trust.
you think you want, but you end up doing it and then feeling regret afterwards. Like, I can't even count the amount of stories that are told about Loki where he not necessarily regrets what he has done, but sort of shifts and be like, well, if I didn't do this, none of y'all would have gotten together in the first place, kind of a routine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even without talking about what's going on the Loki TV show, we already saw in the main timeline MCU where through Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, we saw that he was starting to become a less villainous character for whatever reasons they wanted to paint his villainy in the past as, not fully his fault, whatever, but really going forward, he's as you said, more chaotic neutral than he is actual villain. And so I think we already even started to see that the character can be more than that. I think that there's a lot of past, as you mentioned, where the only way they could show queer characters was if they were villains. Like, that was literally film edict. And I think that the queer perspective has been influenced by that as it has evolved. And I think now we're coming to more of a place where we don't just identify with the villains because we feel outcast, but more are trying to convey stories of, why are we villains? How did you turn us into villains? And are we actually the bad guys here?
And I think that's what we're seeing. Like, another question that just came up, like, I think that's what we're seeing in how also I think Loki's story was flipped because a lot of the fans want to see that redemption. There's so much out there now about that redemption, or rather that neutral side of things, and how, at least in the queer community, there's definitely a generation or a lot of people that like not necessarily the full villain, but we still like that neutral because it can be easy for us ourselves to find ourselves in neutral positions in the world and laws or rules, and we're
It's not always black and white,
Exactly. We're seeing that in more in shows, like with Shira, as we got in a comment. There are definitely allegories now where we have these queer characters, or who are shown to have trauma, or at least have been put in positions of strict parameters that can be alluded to, like religious restrictions or cultural and traditional roles, where whether it's being queer or being yourself and your self identity is repressed. And I think that, like, let's say with characters like Loki, it's not that his queer side is repressed, but there are parts of who he is that's considered like a taboo. And a lot of people can relate to that in the sense of like, well, I'm not evil, but not everyone thinks I'm a good person. And it's been really cool to have, I think more so in recent, a complete spectrum of characters to be able to have like that, the nice, like, hopeful, cherry uh, shows, but also with intense storylines like Shira and Korra, Kipo, Steven Universe, that is out there for the kids, but us as adults can absolutely adore them because we haven't had like this sense of hope in the past, but then also be able to turn to like the angst or the trickery and that neutrality in Loki or Xena, or in the comics. I know comics are a big thing of being double sided. Like, moving forward, I think it's a question for all of us. Like, what do we want to see more of? Like, how is there anything that we've gone through that we want to see represented more, or are there things that we see and we'd like to see more of?
I would like to see normative growth without the interruption of criminality. I would almost argue that Loki is kind of like normative society. I know in Heir Apparent, the show, and throughout his history, we identify on one side of the allegory. When I look at Loki, you look at a god of mischief who is struggling with morality and his outlook. I feel like normative society is doing that with the queer perspective right now. I feel like there is this mischief that's running rampant among society as a whole that's struggling with the fact that queer is just normative as they are, and they're trying to face the facts of morality while making a lot of bumps along the way. I think my perspective on a lot of what fandom has done with a lot of characters in their redemption arcs, it kind of makes me look outside because I know me, I'm queer, I'm fine. We're all queer, we're fine. We're just people who are trying to exist. And I think what I want to see moving forward is I want to see that type of understanding come across without me having to go through the exhaustion of seeing these world shaking events that take me through all of these emotions that I'm trying to keep in mental check to begin with while dealing as a regular citizen. Like, I think Euphoria does a really good job at trying to introduce different issues that we need to talk about when they have characters on the show that just exist. There's a trans woman on the show. They did not announce her as trans. She was just there. They did not discuss the queer element of this show not one time. It was just there. And then it just happened to be a part of the dynamic. It was something that I could appreciate. It was a break for me. And I saw different issues that we could heal from.
Now, Mr. Ken, I know that we finally have you on and pretty stable. We didn't get to hear your answer. I'm not sure. I know that we have different generations between all of us, but have there been any characters or shows or books or anything, musicians even, that through themselves or their stories you've been able to find yourself in a place of healing or at least seen yourself represented?
Well, even as a kid myself, going into the comics and thinking of things, Iceman was my favorite character because I knew he was gay. I felt that he was gay because, and I wouldn't say gay because I was like, I'm saying gender. I don't use gay for myself. So I was like, and that was it was like my superhero. Not just saying gay, but Wonder Woman was another example for me. I think I'm Wonder Woman every day. I was like,
Yeah.
Anyone that can get up here and save the world one man at a time, and you never see or slept with a man, never until Steve came along. But she liked him, but it wasn't really like we hooked up until the newer edition. But I always thought she was a lesbian. That was just my truth.
She is queer canon.
Yeah. So it was just, so I guess because I might be the older one on the panel, maybe I was like, age range. So it was during. There was growing up, Huckling. I think that's correct. I think I'm saying that correctly. I think it was character Huckling, which he was a gay character. And I'll never forget my mom was like, "Oh, you will not be watching that. You will not turn into one of them, blah, blah, blah." Guess what? I did. So, I did. Back in my time, well, now I'm saying it like I'm really super old, but in the 80s, there were TV series such as the Spider-Man that was actually a TV series and it wasn't a cartoon. So that character was, I consider to be gay as well. I guess that's why I liked him. Or, what was my last one? I was going to say, believe it or not, I cannot remember. I think that's the show. I think that's really is. He was the gay super. Well, I will say he was gay, but he couldn't fly. He had powers, but he didn't know how to use his powers.
Greatest hero.
Yeah, greatest hero. That's it. Yeah, America's Greatest Hero. I'm like, wait, believe it or not, I remember the song. I just didn't remember the show. But that's just. I thought that's how my life was supposed to be. I'm just going to be the gayest superhero in the world. I'm here to save the world.
Now, seeing as I'm not sure. I don't know everyone's age in particular. I know I think I might be the youngest, at least, or similar in age range. But like, I know that at least from hearing my mom's perspective, there has been so much change, just even in the last decade. But I can't even imagine having had the media or sources that have been out since the 70s, 60s, and going along with that revolution. Has there been anything in particular that you think, like as a kid, you wanted to see more of, or you wanted to see yourself represented in, that you've been able to actually see?
Well, now in this time, I feel that with the, I mean, well, of course, like I say, in the 80s, I'll be 40 something this year, almost close to 50, 40 something, close to that 50 more. Of course, like, especially within the people of color community, is certain things that we have to keep to ourselves. We cannot be so open about our lifestyle. But those superheroes were my outlets. As I said, I mean, every day I thought I was Wonder Woman. Every day I thought I was Iceman. I was like, it was always a factor of where those actually made me feel like I was important. But now, I mean, I know you brought up Loki, and I know everyone hasn't seen it. I have. I watch it weekly. But I was like Loki on that hand. I stood there, especially this. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't even want to say that either. But some things that happened in this last episode, that like the kissing part, that was like, whoa, and I'm like, oh, I would never have seen that back in that time. But now I get to see that because I live that life as well.
I think it actually comes to an important part. Kevin can agree with me on this one, where it becomes a generational sort of hand me down. Like we've spoken this earlier, where us growing up as kids, we saw certain things on TV that shocked us and gave us crickleting. We're like, that's great, helps us identify, but it could have been done better. So now those same kids who watch those shows are now working in the industry, creating the projects that they wanted to see when they were kids for the next generation. And
Yep.
now the new kids seeing these episodes from Steven Universe and Kipo, saw all of them, and all these other great shows this year. There's an entirely new generation that can see where we've been, what we're doing now, and all we can hope is that they will take it to the next level for queer representation and visibility in an authentic way without having to rely on the tropes of the past that basically traumatized us as we were kids, thinking that that's how it's supposed to be. For example, perfect example with Buffy. Oh, you get into a great relationship. Oh, it's fantastic. You found love. Oh, you're so together. Guess what? Boom, you're dead.
The burying
And
the
then
gays.
comes your trauma. Yeah,
There you
that
go.
happens all the time with everything, or with movies when we were growing up, even with horror films. The people that always get killed first 15 minutes of the film, the gay kid.
Or
the
the black
BC.
Or the
Always.
black, yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
black guy dies first.
It was always either the POC person or the gay person, and it was literally a flip flopping between first and second killed in the films. And like, I don't know about you guys, but that scared the crap out of me growing up. Being like, oh, I'm gonna be gay. Oh, great, I'm gonna die, and it had nothing to do with epidemics or anything. It was just like that's what you see on TV as a kid. You relate that with real life. So the next generation, seeing all this great work that we've done with Adventure Time and Steven Universe and Kipo and Shira and Korra, they're going to be so inspired by our ability to work through our trauma to create these fantastic things that I don't know about you, but I'm super excited for it.
Oh, same.
Definitely.
I know I don't know if I'm the youngest. I'm 28 in like a couple days, and I don't know why that age doesn't hit me. That I'm kind of old. Why? I mean, I can't say I'm kind of old, but I feel old.
Yeah, you're an adult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
and
you can pay
but
your rent and your bills, you're an adult.
That's real adult age.
I still feel like a kid in the sense that like I get to still discover a lot of these things. Like I remember when if I choose a happiest moment in my life, and I always feel kind of silly choosing it, it was the moment of the finale of the Legend of Korra. 100% midnight watching that. I squealed so loud I woke my mom up from sleep.
Being like, did that just happen? Did that really just happen?
Like,
And going
because
online and finding out it did.
yeah, for the longest time, like at least I can say for me, with probably most of people my age and younger, like Glee, there was so much queer coding that was fought for, and one of that's in itself is an entire thesis of like how it was the birth of a kind of like fan pandering in social media. But like going from fighting for something there to just, oh, the reading between the lines wasn't just reading between the lines. Like the creators said, you know what, why not? It was natural, just let it happen. To now having shows like The Owl House on Disney, where it's just like a fun show, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, sexuality, gender expression, they're not like something different. They're just who you are. It's just natural. There's nothing like coming at, there's nothing to come out about. It's just what it is. The only thing that's different is there's a human in a realm of people with magic. That's it. Um, so it's super exciting to see that like that's where we're at right now, and knowing that, if you look up like animation postings or postings for like kids stories, in regards to storytelling and animators, there is so much out there, for these shows that will have just completely open worlds, where being queer is synonymous with being human or just existing. And I think that that's a fantastic point that we've been able to come to. And let's see here. Yeah, there's definitely a couple shows. Star versus the Forces, I can't remember the exact name, but yeah, Disney.
Star versus the Forces of
Forces of
Evil.
Evil,
There were queer coded characters. They came very close to saying that one of the female characters was bisexual, but they never actually outright came and say it, because it was still at that time where everything was so new, and Owl House is able to do all the things that they did because of the things that Gravity Falls and because of Star and because of all these other shows wanted to do.
Yeah, it's like little by little.
I love all the animated shows that we're talking about, but there's 2 live action shows that I want to throw in for right now that are targeted to at least teen-ish audiences. And they might sound silly, but High School Musical, the musical, the series, and Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell has Josie Tota as one of the leads, as one of the producers, and her own trans journey is part of her character's story, but it's not something that is the main focus of her story. She is one of the best sassy cheerleader characters I have ever seen on any teen comedy. She's breathtaking, and everyone just treats her as the girl that she is. She gets a love interest. She's not treated any differently than any of the other characters. And High School Musical, the musical, the series currently has 5 openly queer main cast members. 4 boys and 1 woman are all openly queer, pansexual, 2 bisexuals, 1 gay, and 1 questioning. We're not going to touch that right now. And 2 of the boys are dating.
Spoiler.
Like, this is no, I mean 2 of the boys in real life are dating. Like, I'm talking about, these aren't the characters, these are the actors, are openly queer.
Oh, cool.
And there's gay characters on the show. Like, this is as you were saying earlier, these are the stories that are being produced by the generations who grew up on what we were able to do at the time, and saying, this is how we can do better. At the beginning of one opening number, a character says, ladies, gentlemen, or however else you identify, because the kids who even are making the show really care about making sure that people are represented. And it's really coming through in a big way. And it's kids stuff in a lot of ways. We only just got a gay kiss this month, but it's Pride Month, so let's just be happy about it. Even Disney, with their Disney sitcom standards, are trying to push the boundaries of visibility for queer characters.
I'm gonna give a shout out, because this is live, and today is the This Is Me celebration. It is the first time that Disney has done an active Pride celebration. It is not just live streamed; it is hosted by drag queen Nina West, and it has Disney actors and musicians and anyone that has ever been associated with the label, that they said, you know what, we're going to bring you back and we're going to highlight your queerness. We're going to push you out there. And there's this whole Pride collection. I can get a little emotional over it. I know the company has a lot of controversy in different ways, but
every company does.
Exactly. But to be put out there and pushing, it's pushing. To be out there and just be
celebrating.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is, and it's literally called a celebration of me. This is me, And I think that that is absolutely fantastic because obviously Disney is geared towards kids. And I think it's extremely telling that most of the stories that we're getting that are just so openly queer are directed towards kids because the creators themselves are the ones, like we've said, who have had the reins passed down to them to say, you know what, I'm here, I'm queer, and I'm going to write a story about me.
I would have known I was gay at 6. If the world was back then what it is today in the 90s, I would have known and been comfortably gay at 6.
If
And people
yeah,
don't get that.
the internet, like, you know, if you're not getting enough of what you want on the big media, you know, sites, there's always things like YouTube. There's always like books and comics, and people write, you know, and they're independent, and like you can have that too. You know, it's all available here. So, you know, so
Believe it or
it's a
not,
great time to be alive, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, believe it or not, the queer community owns a lot to fan fiction because
Oh
that's
yeah.
where queer writers have been able to get a following and be able to get a start.
And they
I
get
know,
hired because of all that.
yeah,
Because even more important. So it's great.
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it's great that we also see it in gaming. You know, being in that atmosphere, seeing Last of Us 2 take on a lesbian couple as a primary story, seeing, you know, in more niche titles, things that have been going on for a while that have been being explored and franchises blowing up from it. Persona probably being the main example of a franchise who has been dealing with identity and spectrum for upwards of almost a decade and a half. In Persona 4, you even see, you know, what I guess we would be able to equate in today's terms as a man who fell in love with a non-binary character. He actually thought that she was a boy. And you actually walk through a portion of this story trying to confront this guy's heart. And he's the high school bully. But when this, you know, what he appears to be a boy comes around, he's just like, I don't know how to deal with my feelings on this. And you walk through that. I think those type of experiences are really important to watch that developmental stage of acceptance through gaming. There's, you know, even with the outward expressions that we get with like Soldier 76 and Overwatch and a lot of other representations, Poison Kiss in Street Fighter. Can we please celebrate the fact that we had a trans Shoto character that was kicking butt all through major tournaments in brackets, and you could be perhaps me being a queer guy. I mean, you know, all day. Like, and it's a Shoto character. I like Kim Masters anyway, but now I got this Poison Kiss girl. Yeah, let me just check it on over here and switch my main right quick. You know, so I think it's stuff like that that really, like, you know, really bolsters the excitement. And I just think if I was like 7 or 8 and I had this stuff, and, you know, even though in Japan it might have been titled as something else, Sailor Moon being a prime example of a lot of queer representation, right? And it came over here and it was, you know, normalized and, you know, systemically changed around. If we had that stuff in its raw form, just imagine, you know, what type of person we have. So I am really excited that we're revisiting these stories, that we're exposing things in normalcy, and that we're getting to see things that we were fans of as children, as adults, in their infinitive form.
Yeah, and I know that like we definitely are going to have to start wrapping up soon, but in regard to like what we want to see, I think we actually are getting to see a lot of it in these like remakes or retellings. And I think that while, you know, a lot of the world thinks, oh, this is so different, well, that's because it's more representative of the world today, and it's more real. You know, and I think that while there's always more to say that, you know, we deserve and we're allowed to say, like, you know, we want to see this, we want to see more multicultural representation, we want to see more diversity in like ableism and on the spectrum in all different regards of mental health, and seeing those stories not just in a story of coming out, and not just in those stories of what it means to have your expression and your orientation, but just in being a human being. Like, we are starting to get that, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. Now, I do definitely want to cover where we can, you know, find everyone and, you know, what we're working on. But before we do that, I definitely want to make sure that we highlight Mr. Can here. We met 5 years ago, right? 5 years ago. Yep, 5 years ago. Yami as well, actually. Well, we didn't meet Yami then, but Yami also met Ken. Um, 5 years ago, because we are Orlando based, and we were here, and the day after, the morning after Pulse, we said, you know what, we have to do something. This is who we are. I told my mom, I was like, I want to go. I want to help. I want to do something. And so we went and we looked up like where can we go? Where can we offer our help and our services? And at the time, it happened to be at the center, well, the center Orlando. And there we met the wonderful Mr. Ken, and doing his community outreach, and kind of got dragged into a journey of happily into a journey of um, bringing a community together through media, which wasn't something to really think about at the time when the news media is thinking about the story and how to paint a picture. I think for us, we're used to thinking of media and thinking, how can we unite? So we definitely wanted to make sure then and still today to know where to point the resources to help people in this community. And we always come back to helping the families of those affected from Pulse, the One Pulse Foundation. And we always say, hey, if you can, please donate, or look there to what you would like to do if you want to volunteer or follow any of anything that's listed there. That lovely piece of artwork was our own piece of artwork done by one of our artists here in Orlando. We call her our Pulse Angel, or them rather. We call them our Pulse Angel. Um, and if you ever find us at any conventions, we always do have this piece of artwork up for donation, where 50% of the proceeds do go to the One Pulse Foundation. Um, Now, in regard to local events, I know not everyone watching or here is Central Florida based or even Florida based, but Mr. Ken, is there anything that you have in regard to like local projects or anything that you can recommend for anyone in the community that wants to either volunteer or find resources?
So volunteer opportunities are a large factor here in Orlando. So there are volunteer opportunities at the LGBT Center. They actually have three locations: that's Mills Avenue, Kissimmee, and Hillcrest. They also Zebra House is always accepting volunteers. That way you can always help the kids, that's our youth, to reach out into our community. Crew Health is actually also accepting volunteers as well for community outreach. When we're going to communities, reaching, touching people, encouraging them to get tested and learning their status, and getting them into care. So there are plenty of opportunities that are available. It's just that you just have to check out some of these websites, and most of the time, and then of course come out with Pride is coming up this October, and guaranteeing that there is going to be a lot of opportunity to volunteer as well.
Yes, if you have the chance to come to Orlando, I'm sure Pride this year will be big since last year was COVID. Hopefully, we'll be able to see a lot of engagement in the community. Now, in regard to wrap up, definitely, I know Kevo, you have a lot going on in regard to like your own projects that you've put out in the past, and what we can see, or rather, where we can find you and your projects.
Well, since about 2014, my team has been producing Kid Ride comics, which are available for free over kidridecomics.com. It is a diverse, inclusive team of superheroes from across all the spectrums of gender, race, and sexual orientation, because we didn't really feel like the big names were picking up the slack at the time, so we just decided to do it ourselves. It is tween and up title, so it's age appropriate for anyone middle school and up, because we also feel like there's a lot of, there's a lot of, as we've talked about, like with Steven Universe or She-Ra, like that's very appropriate for young children, or there is adult themes with queer stories, and there's not really a lot in the middle. At comic conventions, when we've worked with the LGBTQ group, we always have kids coming up to our table asking what they can read and what we can recommend, and there are so few queer comics, or had been. Things have changed over the last few years, but we also haven't been to conventions the last few years, so my brain's still not reset. But for so long, there were no queer comics that we felt appropriate to recommend to like a 12-year-old coming up and saying that they identify as queer. So that was part of our mission statement as to why we kept it a tween and up title, because we wanted more representation, that, you know, teachers who were looking for something to recommend to their students could say, here you go. Beyond that, podcasting, Nico and I talk over on Husbands, talking more or less about a lot of different stuff and queer perspectives on stuff like the Marvel Universe and a lot of other different movie projects. There's good, there's bad, there's a lot of bad, but they're working on it.
Yeah. And speaking of Marvel, Matthew, I'm not sure, but we should definitely give you a shout out. If anyone hasn't noticed, Matthew is in cosplay.
Yes.
It's the Eye of Agamotto there.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
I put it on a different chain because this thing is friggin' heavy.
And where can
I
we?
would run around the con with this thing, and it would just like flop by, and I swear I was bruised by the end of the night. It's solid. It's a solid chunk of metal. But yeah, so my projects are: I am director of LGBTHQ.info. We create LGBTQ and diversity programming and special events at Comic-Cons all up and down the Northeast coast. I'm very, very happy and privileged to have the fact that Kevo and his husband Nico and their entire Kid Riot team join us all the time at the cons and our booths. And please shout out to all of them with their queer content. It's just amazing. And to be such great voices on all of the panels that we create, which are huge. We've averaged at least 3 to 6 panels sometimes for each con that we go to. Last year, we were very privileged, even during the pandemic. We basically did almost the entire LGBTQ paneling for New York Comic Con. It was online. It was ridiculous. It was awesome. It was just so bonkers. Yeah. But we are currently on hiatus at the moment so that we can work on getting our 501c3 status, which we will be working with Diversity Geek on as well. And then we hope to be coming back for 2022, starting off at Katsucon and getting our feet wet back into the con game again. And outside of that, I'm working on a lot of cosplays right now. I'm working on a triple Doctor cosplay for Doctor Who, Straight and Fate, all together in one with reversible clothes. It's very cool. And I'm also making geek reversible face masks for COVID for cons, because everybody knows con crud is disgusting and people get sick all the time. So COVID or not, you're probably going to want to wear them anyway. And then with all the extra fabric, I decided to break into the gaming community, and I am making dice bags / trays. So they convert from a huge 7x7 dice bag and with snaps to convert into a nice dice tray for on the go. So you can find all of that stuff on my Etsy page, which is Merch by Matthew.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely need one of those. And JC, where can we find you in your project? I'm sorry.
My upcoming projects. Oh my God, Hilton George, who I think was on earlier today, just signed me on to the BlurCon family. I'm going to be reimagining what gaming looks like in a convention setting, and trying to solve the ever-bridged divide between casual and competitive gamers. I have a very ambitious plan that's twofold. One will be in the convention sector. I'm working on a massive project for the education sector. This project scares me at the possibility of what this could become. So I'm working hard with that. GayPOC is also working on becoming 501c3. I think we're almost there, thank God. GayPOC will also be moving forward to creating a public page. I know my group is private, but that's out of majority consent with being a safe space and being protected. But I feel like there's just certain elements of seasoning with the culture that people miss out on. So we want to make a main page that people can follow in public. In the meantime, you can follow me on twitter.com/WJC, DUBYUHJAYCEE. And of course, you can follow a GayPOC at twitter.com/GayPOC World and Facebook.com/groups/GayPOC. We have a lot of stuff in the pipeline that we kind of can't talk about just yet, But BlurCon, if you want to come out and support, say hi. If you want to have one of us come forward on a podcast, we're open to collaborate. We really just want to reinvent what it looks like to be in the minority perspective and bring forward a new conversation with perspective that we have been keeping for so long, but a lot of people just don't know about.
And that actually ties into the question that we just got. And Ken, I know that you were actually cutting in and out when you mentioned some of those locations that we can support. Now, we just had a question like, how can we support or help, be involved if we aren't able to monetarily donate?
I said okay. So most organizations. Oh, go ahead, boo. Got it. You got to take it. Most organizations always are in need of. Most organizations always are in need of volunteers. Such as the Pulse incident 5 years ago. Volunteers were the backbone to pull this community together. If it wasn't for those volunteers, this community would not be where we are now. So, like I said, the LGBT Center phone number is 407-228-8272. Or you can check them out at thecenterorlando.org. And they have plenty of volunteer opportunities. They have 3 locations. Yesterday, actually, we were doing a testathon at the center's resource center. So that was for 24 hours. It ended at 10 a.m. this morning, and they were looking for volunteers. They were still looking for volunteers. They have other upcoming events that are coming up in the next several weeks and months where they're requesting volunteer assistance. Zebra House actually is also accepting volunteers, and Crew Health, which you can always reach out to me at ken@crewhealth.org, and I can get you set up for those volunteer opportunities as well.
Awesome. And was it Zebra Coalition or Zebra?
Could you hear me that time?
Yes. So
Zebra. I think there's zebracoalition.org. Yeah, I think there's zebracoalition.org, I believe.
Perfect. And now I know, Yami, you can speak to at least Diversely Geek. I know I put you on the spot. Look at our panic guys. And what we have coming up in regard to the next panel and the last panel of the day, and what we have going on in the future, I can speak to in just a moment here.
Yes, definitely. So, yes, I'm Yami. I'm with Diversely Geek. I'm usually like the behind the scenes person, but I came out. See what I did there for this panel. But in the next panel, you'll hear like all about us, and we'll talk some more, and hopefully you'll get to know us a little. Because we put ourselves out there, to hear other people's voices. But this is a way of getting to know us. So join us for the next one, please. Hang on, we'll be right there.
And if you missed it earlier today, obviously we've had the entire day full of panels in regard to PTSD, trauma, self-identity, self-expression, healing, and mental wellness through the journey of fandom.
And join us at MegaCon. I forgot to say MegaCon.
Yes, we do have definitely with the conventions coming up. And a biggest project we have is our self-care workbook that will be coming out soon. There was a panel earlier today with a little bit of a preview. And with that, I am going to bid us all adieu. I thank everyone so very much for joining us. It sounds like we will definitely have collaborations in the future in regard to being perfectly queer and collaborating together. So again, thank you so much, and join us for the next panel. It'll be the last one of the day.